Welcome to our first panel. So how are we dealing with this crisis, with this pandemic crisis economically? And do we have a strategy? How are we going to emerge from the crisis stronger and in a sustainable way? You know, Latvians actually, some say that Latvians are at their best in crisis mode, whether reacting to a deep internal crisis or reacting to some external existential challenge. And I'll give you some examples. But at the same time, conversely, absent such challenges or deep crises, there's also some record that people say that during those good times, we lose focus, we get distracted, we lose our passion for reform, structural reform. So, for example, we had the twin holy grails of admission to the EU, admission to NATO. Latvian institutions, successive governments worked for years to tick all the boxes, to meet all the requirements, so that when it was time for us to join these two exclusive clubs, neither could say no. And we achieved both in 2004, and that was a tremendous achievement. But then we lost our focus, the boom times started, irrational exuberance, uncontrolled spending, uncontrolled borrowing, and we were not prepared a few years later when the global financial crisis hit, and we found ourselves the worst hit in Europe as far as from that crisis. And then again, as I said, we had to react, consolidate, reform. We had to increase productivity, exports. It was very much an export-driven recovery, which we're going to talk about today, which we hope will be also the model for this crisis. Okay, but then, and we marched for this in unison to this next holy grail of Eurozone accession, which we achieved in January of 14. Not without casualties, of course. During that crisis, we lost many people to emigration. And if they're listening, we actually, we need you back because many people left due to those economic problems we had. And, you know, after 2014, again, this pause. I was on the board of the Foreign Investors Council at that time, and there was a noticeable sort of a suspension, maybe an exhaustion, reform exhaustion, where a lot of things didn't get done. And we used to joke, even though it wasn't very funny, that the crisis was a bit too short because some of these structural reforms that we needed sort of didn't get done. Anyway, then we went on. Of course, we joined another international club, the OECD. Whether that was earned or not, that's a question of debate, because a few years later, just 2019, there was this issue of AML, money laundering, that we quite hadn't dealt with in previous years. And it was only when we were up against the wall in 2019 with the potential of grey listing, money val, etc., where we then had a sustained effort over a year to reform our house, clean up our institutions and our banks, and we got over that. So here we are in 2020 with the next crisis. There is a plan. We're talking about a roadmap. The government did, already 2 months into the pandemic, adopt a plan for short-term stabilization, midterm reorienting of the economy, and long-term growth. So we'll be talking about that with our experts today. Now, in general, we've had regular economic growth. If you look at the numbers from 2011 to 19, we averaged 3.2% GDP growth on average, which is not too shabby on a global level, better than average than Europe during that time period, but insufficient from the view if our long-term goal is convergence with Western European income standards, living standards, prosperity, and so forth. So let's go to our panel. We have 6 excellent experts which we've invited to participate. They're all very experienced. I will be giving a short intro of each, but please see their full CV on the website. And after each statement, after the statements, then we'll have opportunity for questions. So I hope you will be providing us questions through the website or through Facebook. Okay. And also, one more, throughout this discussion, I also want to make sure we focus on the theme of WLEIF, of this forum, is diaspora. What is the role of the diaspora around the world, people listening today, in these processes in Latvia in contributing to development and the prosperity of Latvia? With that, I would like to turn to our first speaker, Jānis Ošlejs. He's a serial entrepreneur. His businesses have seen all those ups and downs that I've just described over the years, over the last 10, 15 years. His main business right now, I understand, is Pinimex Group, where he's founder and CEO. Pinimex has a unique product, composite concrete, applied for industrial flooring niche. Jānis finds all kinds of interesting niches, but no one else is doing what they're doing around the world, exporting to 20 countries, I believe. And I want him to talk about his business, but we invited him here today because he was actually invited to the government working group as an expert that created this recovery strategy earlier this year. So, Jāni, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Ivars, for your very kind introduction. And indeed, I understand that also the slides are being shown. So indeed, I was invited to be part of the government strategy group for how to overcome the crisis. And the strategy group essentially said that every crisis is a great time to grow. And I mean, I'm sure many of you will disagree, and you would say, not really. Crisis is a very difficult time, which is also true. Crisis is a difficult time. It's a difficult time, but a great time to grow. So next slide. So why is crisis a great time to grow? I think that in human beings in crisis, and I speak not only of Latvians, but of everybody else in the world, they have a kind of a typical common reactions during the crisis. And during the crisis, we all feel threatened. So we either kind of pretend that nothing has happened, assume that everything goes well, and we just blow ahead. You can click on this slide, or the other reaction that is very typical, we just start to run circles in the crisis, or that we are doing nothing and waiting until the crisis kind of clears out. And all of these three reactions lead to three dysfunctional results. If we decide that we know what is happening and what we need to do, that's a delusion, because nobody knows what is happening and where this world is going. And so if we'll just plow ahead with a delusion that we know what is going to happen, we'll hit the rocks. If we decide that we have to wait out and let's see what happens, and just wait a little bit until it becomes more clear, then we are entering a state of paralysis, and we will sink anyway or hit the sands. We can also decide that we simply need to try everything and throw whatever we have in our pocket at the problem, but that's a chaos that ends up. So next slide. Then the question is, what is the kind of a good and correct way? What's a great way how to think during a crisis? And during crisis, which means that there are a lot of changes in the world, the right way how to approach crisis is to ask a question: how the world has changed? How the world today is different than what it was before? And if you ask that question and you repeatedly ask as the crisis unfolds, you can start to find understandings and ideas on how we can adjust to this crisis and how we can use the crisis to our advantage. Next slide. The result of such thinking is not a clear kind of numerical plan where we should arrive, because I do believe that in a crisis it is impossible to have a plan, like a clear plan with clear goals. It's a delusion to think we can do that. So it's not like a clear destination, we take this exit number 1 and that's our destination and there we go. It's rather a compass. It is an understanding how the world has changed and what is the right compass of how compass heading where we should be going. And then follow that compass heading and adjust as the waves of the crisis move forward. So that is the approach that was taken to develop the strategy for post-crisis. And some of the key compass headings that we took, and I believe that was very important to emphasize, was the first one, that we are looking for export-led growth. And export-based growth, export-led growth is very important for a small country like Latvia, because only in export, when we are selling our goods and services worldwide, we can actually have enough scale so that we can make enough batches that we can make like any serious money or become rich. And also in export, there's lots more of opportunities than in the local market here in Latvia. And the opportunities that we saw with this were plentiful. So in crisis, of course, you can say, you know, how can you grow or where to go when everything is down? But is everything down? So when we asked really this question, okay, we understood a few sectors are completely down, like a cruise ship. You know, I think, you know, people will not board cruise ships for a year at a minimum. So that industry is dead. That's clear. But is that true for every industry? I think for IT, this is a boom year. For everything connected to internet delivery, as we know by Printify and Printful here in Latvia, this is a boom year. This is the year to really grow. For everything connected with logistics, warehousing, all of these things, it's a boom time. So the opportunities are huge. The question is how to kind of use these opportunities to our advantage. Next slide. So we came up in the government strategy group to a 3-step process of what Latvia should be doing to go through this crisis. And the 3 steps are stabilize, reset, and grow. Stabilize means it is far more important at this point to stabilize the economy and stabilize all the companies, because it is far more difficult to create a new structure than to stabilize and turn the existing structure somewhere. So we felt that it is very, very important that we preserve the companies. We preserve so that they are able to move and go in the right direction. Reset means the world has changed, and the world has changed irrevocably. It's quite clear. So what is the area where we can go right now? Which are the sub-segments which are really growing? What we can use? So I asked this question in my own company, and we gain answers that we will, for instance, concentrate on logistics sector, because that one is definitely growing. People will have less shopping malls all over the world, more warehouses, as the goods are moving out of the shopping malls and into the warehouses for internet delivery. Once it's clear for everybody where to go, for my salespeople where to go, but also the same for Latvia, for everybody else. So where has industry moved? What is your reset that is needed to go? And then grow. Grow is about execution. So once it's clear where you want to go, it's about how you execute. So how do you grow? So next slide, please. So the strategy looked at 5 basic areas that are needed for the growth, and looked at ways and possibilities how we can grow within those 5 areas. The 5 areas were also chosen because they were something that was already in the kind of the way how the government kind of thinks about it. and they are human capital. So how do we get people that know what we have to do and that are able to use this new crisis to their advantage? How can we retrain the people from the professions that are clearly going down, like the people, very educated people that were working with the cruise ships? So where can they work now? What they can do? So some of the initiatives there are retraining of the people for the IT sector, which clearly can absorb far more people than what are employed right now, and other initiatives. The next is innovation. So what we can do more for the innovation. So how can we do both for new products like startups, what I know Andris Beziņš is going to talk about later, what we can do more in innovation also for digitalization. It's completely clear that whatever we are investing right now in digitalization of the companies definitely is going to be in the right way. So if we use this crisis and this opportunity and move first, we can really gain advantage over the others in the sphere of digitalization. Then it's the business environment for the exporting capability. I think Ivars was maybe alluding to this as in his previous role as in the American Chamber of Commerce. So how can we make our markets, our environment better for exports? The fourth one is finances. So how can we get finances that are available? So right now we have some challenges to get enough finances. So especially we had also during the beginning of the crisis. So what we can do, I think that the government also took very nice steps during the crisis, including significant funding that was made more available through Altums for all kinds of development and export and other guarantees, including a quite big, large new capital fund of 80 million euros, but also lots of guarantees and other options that are right now available for the companies. Definitely it can be said that this was a really fast move, far faster than many other countries in Europe. And so that was good. And the final one is infrastructure. So what we can do right now to build the infrastructure, and which type of infrastructure do we need? And again, I'm quite happy that the government spent right now on this infrastructure more on the roads. There are plans to build industrial parks. So I really hope these do come to fruition, as this would really form a great infrastructure base going forward. And there were some numerical metrics that were that are put in the plan. So 165,000 people more retrained, 300 million euro more for R&D spending, 30% growth of exporting companies that have received some help per year growth, 1.3 billion euro more in credits and guarantees, and 2.2 billion euro in public-private investments in infrastructure. So putting all of this together, I believe that Latvia can act and can move fast. I was very happy that Latvia was so quick to adopt this plan and start to think about these things. I know that in many other countries there are no such plans, and so we have this opportunity to really be the first to understand how the world has changed and the first to use it to our advantage. And like I said, crisis is a great time to grow. Not an easy one, but a great.
Thank you, Jānis. It's a very detailed plan. I've read it. Just a quick follow-up question. Is this a live document? Is it sitting neatly in the drawers of the ministries, or is there an implementation plan? Is there follow-up? Are there division of responsibilities? How do we ensure that this goes forward as a plan that's being executed rather than something that was nicely written up last May?
Yeah, he was great question. I think that we all must push and must exert pressure on the government to implement it. Everybody knows from your own companies, and everybody knows from the government, whatever is not pushed tends to just sit somewhere. But I'm very happy to report that we just had, there is now, Prime Minister has requested more detailed plans for continuation of this plan and implementation. So the working group is working further to oversee and check, if the ministries are doing something. So I would say like this, that I mean, I'm a realist. I understand that not everything is done perfect, but if we all together put enough pressure on the government to do something about it and to really do something to further the exports, we have a chance. The plan is good. We have to implement it.
Okay, then let's turn to our next speaker, who is our only government representative on the panel, Kaspars Rožkalns. He is the Director General of the Investment and Development Agency of Latvia, WLEIF. This is a government agency subordinate to the Ministry of Economics, responsible for export promotion, inward investments, attraction, innovation support, and so on. Kaspars has earlier headed the WLEIF offices in Germany, and prior to that in Shanghai, China. So, Kaspar, the floor is yours, the stage is yours, the screen is yours, to tell us the government's view of how we're going to implement this strategy. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I would say the pressure is huge. Apparently, when we have to push the government, and I am here in this panel, the government. So, yeah, but getting down to the details, I would say the good news from the COVID exit strategy, it was dealt very fast because we all got around the table and figured out the first steps, what we have to be done. And now when the pressure was maybe during the summer a little bit off, we were able to see that not all, let's say, our ministries are playing along within the framework of the plan. However, again, when we go more and more into the red zone with the infection rates, we see that everybody is getting back to the plan. And if I could ask for the first slide, I'll try to be brief on. Yeah, thanks. It means that this one of the key factors that already Yanis mentioned is the export is a key advantage in our strategy that we have to boost. Therefore, we have created this instrument for export promotion that previously stopped existence in this February. We have found an additional money, and we have implemented all these additional new ideas, what can be supported, how to help the companies to move into the exports. And we have found the funding for that. The major difference, if previously the program was focusing on the exhibitions, then currently the activities are quite a lot and mostly focusing on the digitalization of the instrument, how to move into the export sector. And that is one of the missing part that was missing also in innovation. During the working group, we found out that the companies are good in exhibitions, but when the exhibitions stop, they don't know exactly what to do. And another one very good thing what happened in this program is currently we are asking for the companies to deliver this export strategy. Therefore, we see first of all that the company are thinking in a longer term, not just the exhibition because somebody ringed me up and then the exhibition is good, but because we see that need. Next slide, please. And on the other, let's say, hand, because when we see from the one industry, the companies are going into the 2-3 markets, we can focus our government activities, our unified funding in the marketing in that sector, very specific from year on year, because we see where the clusters are going, where the industries are going, and we can support to that. Not just everybody needs to follow our plan, we are following the company plans. Yeah, next slide, please. Yes. Then on the training program, this is again, this is only a small part of the program that is implemented. This is a new program for mostly actually investors. So when they come to open the company here in Latvia, we're able to train the potential employees in this already IT sector, languages, in general IT, to work with the data, to gain new skills. And this program is going to be launched very, very soon. And this is not the only one program. We also have the even bigger, I think roughly 3 times bigger program in the unemployment agency with very similar activities. Therefore, we're able to retrain the employees in Latvia who are, because of the COVID-19, without, let's say, employment, they are able to learn new skills, to get together with the companies, learn the skills in the companies, to learn the skills according to the company needs. That is the major part that was missing, because we had a lot of training, but nobody used those employees after the training. And that was, let's say, a key obstacle and key factor why this didn't work as well as we expected. Next slide, please. Yes, this is, if we look more about the training program, what will happen is we'll train not only employees to retrain skills, we'll also train the management of the companies. So they're more skilled in new technologies. So because one of the problems in the export companies, in small, medium companies, if they are, let's say, already 20 years old or more, they do not have the latest update on what is available, how to work with different statistics, and how to implement the data in the, let's say, export strategies. And we'll be able to train also not only the employees to get in the office and to start working, but we're also able to train the management to be able to adjust the products, adjust the markets, and be ready to export more. Okay, next slide, please. This is already what also Yanis, I think, mentioned about Altums and the long-term funding. This is different type of the funding available, and this is mostly loans. Let's say all of them are different type of loans. But the important part is the strategy is mostly based on if the company sees the long-term business, they're not afraid to take a cheap long-term money to adjust the business, to survive the crisis, because they trust in their business. If the companies are only going for grants, and it means a gift from the government, it means they're not, they do not have enough skin in the game, how to say. Therefore, they maybe do not drill that deep into investing what can be done different, how we can innovate, how we can change, how we can get into the new products, new markets. When we see that the companies, let's say, have a good relationship between grants and loans, then we see that, yes, in the very risky part of innovation, they are mostly looking for the grants, and that's fine. But when they have to sustain their business during some kind of crisis, they should look more into loans. And if the companies are doing that, and we see that they are ready for long-term business, and this is something, again, what came up from this strategy in real support mechanisms. And now the next slide, please, about what Andris Rubins explained in the previous panel on the state image. It's unified brand, but we used the state image strategy because this was exactly the wording how it was put in this COVID-19 strategy. So what we did is we put this unified brand as a key factor and key part in the exit strategy, because what is missing till now is missing the let's say the knowing about the Latvia, and when somebody tells, hey, I'm producing this in Latvia, or this is created in Latvia, or born in Latvia, or whatever, then not enough people know what is that. And this is why this is so important now to tell these stories, either how we dealt with the COVID-19 or how we dealt with the whatever crisis previously, how are we doing with, I don't know, in science and innovation, and how are we doing in mixing the cultural with their modern stuff and traditions with the modern stuff. Because through these stories, we gain publicity. We can see that if the country has cultural relations with other country, the trade relations comes close to that. And it is very hard and to be a huge partner in trade without really close cultural relations. Therefore, this is again something that we see. The unified brand, when we come out of the COVID crisis, and if we manage to get all of us behind unified values of Latvia, we'll come out way more stronger, and we'll be able to support our exports in way more sectors, and with this positive values and positive image, how our potential partner sees us in overseas. Yes, this is from me. Thank you very much, and I give back mic to the Ivars.
Thank you, Kaspars. I have some questions on export support promotion, but let's move on to our next speaker. We can come back to that in the Q&A. If we're talking about exports and that an export-driven recovery and a sustained growth through exports, let's talk to our exporters. Our next expert, is Lotte Tisenkopfa-Iltnere. She's founder and chair of the board of Madara Cosmetics, a born in Latvia company, natural cosmetics, skin care, hair care, baby care, exporting to more than 25 countries. I checked the numbers, 15 million euro in turnover last year, I believe. Company's been around 15 years, doing well. Also publicly listed. Their shares are traded on NASDAQ Riga's alternative market, First North. So Lotte, thank you. Welcome. Tell us briefly about your experience overcoming or dealing with the crisis, and also tell us about your success as an exporter and what other exporters and Latvian companies can learn from that. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Ivars. You gave a perfect snapshot of Madara. And yeah, so indeed, 2020 started with like a big challenge. And I can say that at Madara, we love challenges. And that was a challenge that, we put on ourselves even before the COVID crisis came. And then came the crisis, the COVID crisis. And we decided that we are going to pursue our goals for this year. So we didn't give in and kind of like really worked hard to overcome the crisis. And I can say now, after 9 months in this year, that we have done that pretty successfully. We had plus 48% growth compared to last year. And when I think about the kind of like the what were kind of the drivers behind the growth, and we grew more than we planned actually, then I could highlight maybe kind of like 5 formulas that allowed us to take crisis as opportunity and increase our growth. And first of all, I think that the kind of the terms crisis is very much linked with the concept of change. Because in crisis, so many things change. And at Madara, naturally, we have been, very much focused on trying to sense the market, trying to foresee the trends. And this trend sensing gave us perhaps an opportunity to take this challenge and turn that into, in opportunity. And yeah, so perhaps one of the change or the trend that was very clearly seen in this crisis, and this is not a new trend, is that customers are focusing more and more and giving preference more to ethical and sustainable products or brands. So they demand that products they buy comply with their values. And I think the COVID crisis gave all of us time to reevaluate what is really important in our lives, and gave more meaning to the choices that we make in a broad sense, but in consumer products. We perhaps see a product we buy as a vote. So we vote with our money, with our wallet for something that matters to us, and so opening way for brand democracy. So demand for more clean and ethical products is totally in line with Madara core values, which is value-driven business, sustainability, organic ingredients, and innovation. And like taking these two things together gave us a very, very good kick and like natural demand for a products like ours. And I think that recognizing that the ethical and sustainable values are becoming increasingly more important is an important message in general for businesses across the consumer or B2B businesses to take into account. And for instance, one of the reports, global research reports that was conducted in this year after the COVID crisis reveals that ethical performance of brand, and that was for the consumer goods, is 3 times more important than their competence or the product quality. So the how good the brand positions in consumers' mind, it's much more evaluated than how it will perform its specific tasks like cleaning or washing or whatever. So this was the kind of the first formula that Madara used to overcome the crisis. And another change or trend that we saw is that consumer habits of how they use particular products in the personal care industry changed really quickly. And I'm not just talking about sanitizers that we all were struggling to find and buy. So there were much more other changes as well of what kind of with what kind of implication they buy their beauty products, how they change their routines, for instance, like at-home spa and soothing treatments were becoming increasingly more important to offer the balance in the psychologically difficult time. And we saw opportunity for new products to launch, and that paired together with the innovation and like really dynamic R&D that we have been pursuing for like over 14 years. And the agility of the team, it helped us to bring up very quickly, but it was with many challenges still, new products to the market. And this year we launched over 40 new products, which is really, really a nice achievement. So that definitely helped us to overcome the challenges. And then, of course, I also have to mention that the online migration, so people turn to online for much more than purchases, for experiences as well. And that paired together with a strong focus of Madara team on e-commerce. So that definitely gave a boost to our results. And online migration also helps us to reach a global customer and also to provide branding, to do branding online, provide different kind of consumer experiences online, like going beyond just online conversion. Yeah, number four, I would say this is that is like on like trend sensing or capturing the micro trends that are very quickly changing in the consumer's mind. So capturing the dynamic mood of consumers and that's put together with in-house marketing and content creation at Madara, helped us to create exactly right content at the right time, make sure it works. And here, and as an example, I could share that we really use the nice, beautiful image of Latvia, so that's beautiful green playground, providing soothing experience for those that were locked in their houses all around Europe. So like helping to provide like really nice and beautiful experience and bonding to the brand. So this beautiful image helped us really to create nice performing brand building online. And of course, number five is the flexibility of the team to restructure all the operations. So to make sure that we can quickly adapt to new working conditions offline, like from home, and restructure the R&D and production processes and teams. And the mobility. So that definitely is important too, but that is more on the operational level. So these are kind of the formulas that I think were like crucial to thrive through the crisis. But I would also like to highlight that kind of the beautiful points of the pandemic too, which I think we just don't, we really need to see how we can capture these good things. First of all, of course, it's better for the planet, as we all know that, the CO2 emissions went down during the first wave. So we can see how we can capture that benefit, how we can see and maintain some of the practices that we learned during the first wave and also now. So the replacement of resources, how we can do things differently, because the pandemic showed that it's totally possible and we can do 10 years in 10 days. So digitalization of opens the market much broader, because when we can reach consumer through digital media, I think the locality loses its importance, so we can reach broader broader customers. I think that also the crisis, it opens up new conditions, new opportunities, and kind of sets Latvian businesses on kind of similar level with the European businesses. So we have really beautiful opportunity to feel, to sense the trends, and then to catch up with European businesses, or to surpass them, offering new services, new modes of working, of course, also recognizing that the ethical and sustainable claims are becoming increasingly important too. And that very beautiful green Latvian playground we can really use as asset for the branding and like as a business claim and one of the drivers. So that's in short all from me.
Thank you, Lotte. I think it's important that these 5 or 6 factors that you mentioned helped you not only in this current crisis mode, but in building the company. The cosmetics and body care industry, as you know better than I, is very crowded globally. and the fact that you've found this niche. Is there anything to being a Latvian company? I know you like to source natural local ingredients, Baltic or Nordic ingredients. Is that the key? I'm trying to find the key for what other Latvian companies should be thinking about to reach global markets like Madara.
Yeah. Indeed, the local ingredients like Nordic like natural resources gives us a point in differentiation, but it's not the only USP. I think that the very important focus on sustainable, clean formulation that provide performance is one of the key differentiator that really corresponds with what consumer is looking for. And if we look at our industry, we can see that the major growth in the beauty and personal care comes from kind of green-minded brands compared to conventional brands, and the global growth basically comes from sustainable segment in beauty. And the conventional segment basically stays at the same level or grows like really 1 or 1.5% a year. So they really focusing on our core values and delivering high quality products together with these values, I think is the key differentiator that helps us to be an export-driven company and to gain trust and repeated purchases. But on the branding side, I think that we really always try to capitalize our locality in terms of building the story, where we come from, what is our background, so the nature and the beauty of the nature of Latvia. So that has always been kind of like something that we see as a very important asset for brand building.
Thank you. So let's move now from cosmetics to electronics and IT. Our next expert speaker is Bergs, CEO and board chair of SAF Technica. Also a serial entrepreneur. He's been active in Latvia in IT and electronics for, I believe, 3 decades. SAF Technica is a unique manufacturer of point-to-point microwave data transmission equipment products, sold in more than 100 countries, also listed on NASDAQ Riga. So, Normand, the floor is yours. The screen is yours.
Thank you very much. You know, it's always tricky to participate in public events because you have to guess what audience is expecting and why they are there. To sit in electronic conference is 10 times more tricky, because I have no clue, are you even there? Or maybe most of you just went to rake an autumn leaves. Therefore, I will try to be short and move as soon as possible to some form of dialogue. From simple business perspective, if you do something, most probably you have 2 motivations. One thing is to sell more, and second is to learn something and to get a new contact. So now for the sales, you see my very nice t-shirt with mushrooms, and I do believe that this is also some sort of reaction to crisis, because this is new merchandise made by pretty famous Latvian painter Elita Patmalnieca, and somehow crisis because, you know, not so many people can go to exhibitions and all that art world is bit on brakes. She moved into merchandise. And it went very, very well. And connected together with online sales, you know, with all of suddenly internationalization of all sorts of trades, you know, it opens a lot of new opportunities. Regarding SAF, all in all, as we are in telecom business, actually we haven't experienced that much of crisis. Demand is there, but of course most of hurdles connected with logistics, connected with supplier delays because of lockdowns or quarantines at suppliers' premises as well. All sorts of virus-related problems at the customer sides is affecting us, but not that much. So I would say it's safe to state that most of electronics industry in Latvia is surviving pretty well and growing. But as from perspective of new products, we rushed in March. So our main business is microwave radios, but we are also pretty active in sensor networks. So we're designing and manufacturing of different sorts of wireless sensors. And we thought pretty naively that, hey, there are many people admitted in the hospitals and all world is doing makeshift hospitals, so they have to measure temperature, and it's, you know, a nice way to utilize radio-based sensors that you can monitor big groups of people. So we rushed to design really very nice, very handy, very good quality human thermometers, and made a pretty big international noise about that. Everybody was clapping our back. Okay, guys, you did a very nice product. We like it. Actually, very, very few orders followed. So, which means that you have to be very careful in trying to rush into new markets or design a new product. However, without what is the right word? We didn't expect that another product, which is in our portfolio, and this is portable CO2 meter, suddenly during the summer started to grow exponentially. And again, main reason being the fact that virus is disseminating through the air, and quality of ventilation is extremely critical to have a safe classrooms in schools, kindergartens, or all sorts of public buildings. And suddenly, as doctors realized that ventilation is that important, in fact, product mostly started to sell itself. Referring back to Jānis Ošlej's statement that, yeah, it would be naive to have a comprehensive plan for crisis because there are too many unknowns. But you can have a direction, you can have compass, you can have guidance, and that helps. And you have to be extremely ready to react to all the challenges. And now to the public part of what I have in my mind. So, very many people in the public sector, in the state side in Latvia, and also in business circles, speaking and talking about startups, about a startup ecosystem, as a startups as a way to make a new business, make a new product, you know, become a billionaire one day. And I'm pretty sure that Andris after me will talk about that as well. But at the same time, it's pretty much forgotten that those are established companies, existing companies, who are designing a new product and putting them into existing or new markets just next day. And we extremely need more resources into vehicles, into instruments which help to design a new product for existing companies. And it's not startups. So vehicle here is competence center. And those of you at the opposite side of the screen, you can Google Kompetenču centri. There are 8 of them in Latvia. And you can find there, this is public information, all the projects are public. You can find there most of the companies who are ready to do some sizable exports or are already doing. Means that if you want to make some new business, get some new contacts, find an opportunities, this is a great place to be. And for Latvian public side, I would once more stress the importance of investing and taking care of existing businesses. Because this is where real today's and tomorrow's cash flow is. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's it for all, I think. I would be more than happy to discuss anything which comes in your mind. And I believe that dialogue is best form of communication, because then we already know and can talk about subjects which are of interest of audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Norman. Just a quick follow-up question. What makes you nimble as a Latvian company to compete with the big boys, with the big companies? I did see your brothers, Jānis, he's the VP of sales in the US, heading the US operation, at the 5G forum here in Riga last week, where he made the argument that smaller companies can compete with the large multinationals in IT. But what is the secret, not the secret, but what is the secret of your success as being a nimble exporter, manufacturer in 100 countries? And how do you keep off the competition from the global companies?
You have to innovate. You have to innovate constantly. And you have to be very, very quick. And you have to react very fast to all the environment. It's like I was pushing the idea of national animal, you know. I wanted to make it for Latvia, but somehow people didn't like it at the first glance. It's a cockroach, you know. Cockroach is a very nice thing, you know. It's a bit ugly. It's very, very fast. It can feed on crumbles, and it's practically indestructible, you know. This is how we operate.
Okay, thanks. Let's move on to our next speaker. You mentioned startups. So I would like to introduce now as our next speaker, Andris Bērziņš. He's the managing partner of Change Ventures, which is a venture capital seed fund focused on the Baltics, the Baltic region, and on Baltic founders. He's also one of the godfathers of the startup ecosystem in Latvia, which didn't exist 8 or 9 years ago, but Andris was there at the founding of all the organizations that today composes the Latvian startup ecosystem. And Change Ventures, they just launched a new fund last year for euro 30 million after a much smaller fund a few years earlier. So Andris, please tell us how startups and the world of startup financing, venture capital, can bring benefit to Latvia.
Thank you, Ivars. Really appreciate it. and great to be back here again, unfortunately online, but hopefully next year we can do this face-to-face in Latvia. So if someone can switch the slides on, please, and start the slideshow. Thank you very much. So what I wanted to just briefly touch on, we've had a lot of presentations, I'll be quick, but talk about startups as one of the drivers of growth out of the pandemic. Next slide, please. And especially about why a small country like ours has a unique opportunity to leverage IT startups as a growth vehicle. So unlike neighbors like the Belarus and Ukraine, we don't have the number of people that could generate IT companies which employ 5,000 or 10,000. We need to use our small people resources in a very smart way. And the key to that, in my view, is building intellectual property. So basically building companies that provide a product or service that they can export and that has intellectual property built into it and therefore can create much more value per employee. To show what kind of value can be generated by these companies, last week was a great example. One of Estonia's startups was sold for 1.5 billion. So this is a company of about 360 people that's worth 1.5 billion. I don't know the exact numbers of ownership in that sale, but my guess is roughly 300 or 400 million at least of that was owned by the founders and probably 50 to 100 key employees in the company. And so that is capital that's come back in. An equivalent exit like that would be something like 3% of our annual foreign direct investment in Latvia, a single exit. And the reason you can generate 1.5 billion in value is because there's intellectual property in that business and the business can scale quickly. It has a global market and it has a business model that can scale. Next slide, please. So the way, so my fund invests across all 3 Baltic states, and sort of recently I've started to describe the Baltic states with a new term, which is the next Israel. I used to work for a US-Israeli startup, and I see a lot of parallels. The only thing different is that we don't have the military-industrial sort of background. But Estonia is a more mature ecosystem, but we can definitely see the way this works. You have hungry, hustling, more energetic founders than you do in, say, Western Europe. And when you have some of them that experience this massive growth, this large success, these people build contacts, experience, and capital, which they plow back into the next startup, either as angel investors or as serial founders. And so we see this effect in the 3rd generation in Estonia. So some of the Skype founders, Taavet Hinnikus, started TransferWise. You see already spin-offs from TransferWise that are doing the same thing. And in Lithuania, the same effect is happening with 2 of their big success stories, Vinted and Tessinet. Next slide, please. So a lot of people ask me, why is Latvia behind? And the answer is, it's very simple. We just haven't had those exits yet. Exits are important because they create this capital. They release this capital to go back into investment in new companies. And that's a very important part of the process of scaling up. So having sort of Silicon Valley style venture-backed companies is important for that dynamism in that ecosystem. However, there are great companies here that are growing very quickly. Giraffe 360 just announced a round. We have an investment in a company called Aerones that's doing very well. Localize, Printful and Printify I already mentioned, so lots of great examples, and so I think this will move very, very quickly. So last slide, please. So what can be done to speed this up? So we have a startup tax law that's just been updated with some great changes, and hopefully that will finally deliver on its promise very soon. We have to finish parliamentary approval of employee stock option law for limited liability companies. Hopefully that should be through maybe even by Christmas, which would be very important. Altum has been doing a great job supporting, as Janis said, supporting companies during the crisis. That's very important. And then some of the ecosystem support. So the Startup Association actually also TechChill, the conference here, for them to get support to run these events that bring investors and founders together and generate these events. So the investor in Draft 360 just posted a blog yesterday about his story of how he arrived in Riga at the TechChill conference, met the founders, which I introduced him to, and so these events, this meeting of people, because business is all around people, really are very important. And the other project I'm working on is to have a startup house where we can put one central location for startups here, similar to Maria 01 in Helsinki. So these are some of the things that the government can get involved in and is doing, and we need to finish. And then the last piece, to mention the diaspora, and Ivars correctly mentioned that that's an important aspect here. So increasingly we are seeing more and more interaction with the diaspora. So we're seeing people who have lived abroad for some years becoming founders in startups, building teams back here for their startups. They're all moving back here and taking the contacts that they have there. And so everyone who is interested in these kind of companies, I think you can find connections through Tech Hub, through the Startup Association, through the various organizations, and reach out and become involved in a company, either outside Latvia or here. And I think there's great opportunities to come. So thank you. That's it from me.
Thank you, Andres. You mentioned the new Israel model. This brings to mind the Israeli diaspora, which successfully cooperates around the world, and it's something we need to promote as well. I would like to discuss that, but we need to get to our next speaker, so we have a little time left for questions and answers from the public. So let's move to the diaspora. Our one expert outside of Latvia is Mikls Kīns. He's in Chicago, Illinois. He's the president of the Latvian American Chamber of Commerce. Full disclosure, I'm also a board member on that chamber. And he has nearly 20 years of experience in U.S. and domestic and international financial markets. Presently, he's in real estate, investment and development, Senior Vice President and Managing Director of B Commercial Realty in Chicago, Illinois. Mikls, the floor is yours. Good morning. Sound?
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Ivar. And thank you for having me join such a distinguished panel today. And yes, good morning from Chicago. Yes, we can have the slides be brought up, please. Yeah, so good morning. And as Ivars mentioned, I'm Mikls Kīns, president and founder, one of the co-founders of the Latvian American Chamber of Commerce. We are a nationwide chamber here throughout the United States. And if you're looking to find more information about us, we can be found at www.latvianchamber.com. Next slide, please. Just to start off quickly, I want to let everybody know a little bit more about who we are as an organization. I think it's critical to where we're heading. We were founded in October 2017 at a very successful event called Spotlight Latvia Chicago, which was a partnership of many organizations from Allah to Oddly at the Ministry to LEA and so forth. We are, for all intents and purposes, still kind of a startup organization. We were making great inroads and a lot of progress in organizing events, and then as COVID hit, everything was ground to a halt and moved to a virtual platform. But roughly speaking, we have about 120 individual and corporate members, and growing month over month. We are a not-for-profit volunteer organization. I think that's important. We are a group of individuals that volunteer our time. We all have full-time employment, work elsewhere, and we don't have any staff members. So it is, at least presently, a nationwide organization that's volunteers. However, we are the only US-based Latvian organization that focuses exclusively on business and networking. And I know other groups do have a certain element of business and networking, but that's exclusively what we do. And it's clearly laid out in our mission that we are here to promote the economic vitality of our members, meaning the success of our members, and also, as everyone strives, is to try and make more money. We do organize a range of national and regional events. We have newsletters, websites, and we're most known now and probably on a global basis for our annual Spotlight events. Again, our partnerships with various organizations throughout the world. This year's event was postponed for a year, so we will have our next one September 23rd, 2021 in Los Angeles. We invite everyone to please join us. And given Leah's expansion to Boston, we'll be expanding that the year after to Boston in September of 2022. But one thing, again, to point out is we are only as strong as our membership. Next slide, please. I won't read the full mission, but this is something that is clearly stated out on our website, latvianchamber.com. But again, we're a non-for-profit organization dedicated to fostering our members' business interests, educating and facilitating commercial contacts and building relationships. Again, promoting each other's economic vitality. We do have a national network. We have regional directors on the East Coast of Massachusetts and New York. We're based in Illinois. We have Minneapolis, Texas, Colorado, very successful chapter being run by Berg, and then a Southern California chapter as well. And we will be expanding, continue to expand throughout the nation, up and down the Pacific coast and the Atlantic coast and throughout the Midwest. Next slide, please. So first, just to give you a backdrop, again, focusing on the U.S. diaspora. What does that mean? Well, as of 2017 in the United States, there were 86,000 residents that identified themselves as being Latvian or partial Latvian. Comparing to our neighbors, Estonia has about 28,000 residents here, and Lithuania has about 650,000, of which a very, very large population lives here in Chicago. In 2019, the United States and Latvia, the United States exported about 552 million and imported about 815 million in goods from Latvia. And this year's numbers through 2020 September, and it's COVID related, exports have decreased by 41% and imports have decreased by 36%. So again, hopefully it's just a one-year anomaly, but imports and exports have gone down considerably. Now, as a trade partner, though, in general, Latvia makes up only 0.021% of exports and 0.023% of imports. So again, this is 0.02, not 0.2, not 2%, but only 2 basis points of each. So fairly small numbers. If you look at the broader EU relationship, the EU is one of the largest trading partners, making up, even this year, 16.6% of exports and roughly 18% of the imports. However, if you look at our numbers and compare that to the EU in aggregate, we are only providing 0.13%, so about 13 basis points of the exports and imports both. However, if you look at our population versus the population of all of the EU, we are roughly almost 50 basis points or 0.447% of the EU's population. So that means on a per capita basis, we are not up to par with our European neighbors. And that in order to be par and have a per capita similar trade, we should have exports and imports increase at least 3.5 times more from where we are today. Next slide. And a little bit more about the U.S. diaspora. I do mention this often. A book came out in 1996 called The Millionaire Next Door, where basically it was presenting the 15, in this case, this league table here, 15 economically productive small population ancestry groups. And it is a little out of focus here, but if you can see, Latvia is actually number 2 after Israeli. So that means as a group, we were the second most economically productive ancestry group here in the United States. I know it's an old league table. It is almost 25 years old. But the point is we made it here once and historically, and even if it no longer exists, if we're no longer number 2, I assume we're still top 10 at least. But we did this independently. We did this as individuals. We did this not organized, and we did this unknowingly. We made this, achieve this level. So imagine if we were able to take this into context and organize ourselves in the diaspora, working closely with Latvia to ensure that we continue to hit this number, if not achieve number 1. And one area to look at is that we need to act more like what are called high context cultures. In a high context culture, people rely on their networks of friends and family, viewing their relationships as part of one large community, meaning they work together. As you mentioned it, Israelis have a global high context network, and high context societies tend to be Asian countries, the Middle East, including Israel, whereas the opposite, low context cultures, our relationships are not viewed as important and as an important part of business. The United States is a low context culture. Latvia and most of the EU are low context cultures as well. So imagine if we were able to focus on trying to be more of a high context culture, ensuring that we hire Latvian, we buy Latvian, we promote Latvian, we collaborate Latvian, we educate on what it means to invest or help Latvia. Obviously, one of the things we're not going to do is we're not going to change how we are culturally as a society, but just recognizing it and promoting that, I think, could help us for the future. So the next slide, please. So what does that mean for the diaspora in a post-COVID context, and how can the diaspora help Latvia? Well, the diaspora in the US, as many know, has spent the last 75 years focusing on initially securing independence, preserving independence, and then preserving culture and religion. It's time now as a group on a global basis to focus on business and business promotion. We achieved that number 2, as I mentioned, independently, but if we were able to at least mimic a high context society and make sure that, again, we buy Latvian, support Latvian, and we do that on a global basis, imagine what we can achieve if we're not number 1, at least, again, that number 2 or 3 spot. One idea that we at the Latvian American Chamber of Commerce have been working on and reviewing over the last year is potentially trying to set up some sort of Latvian import support fund. I like some of the conversation we were discussing, maybe we call it the Latvian Import Compass Fund or something like that, because it provides direction. It could be certainly as a private equity style fund to help the small and medium-sized enterprises, the SMEs, the Latvian companies that are ready and able to export to the United States. We would, as this fund, obviously be a private capital, but possibly even a private-public partnership, where we provide access to capital, to distribution, to joint venture partners, to warehousing, to tax, to legal. Really anything and everything is a turnkey for any businesses trying to come to the US. We are here as a diaspora. In particular, if the Chamber, if we're able to compile and almost map out the expertise of our diaspora, we could provide through this fund as well some sort of instant mentoring support network. So imagine if a Latvian company wants to come and import here or export to the United States, and they have a senior entrepreneur that's been in that industry for 25, 30 years working in the United States to help guide them through that transition. One thing to point out, as opposed to what Anders is talking about, we're not looking to be or would want to be an incubator or accelerator. Instead, it's that marketing support solution to provide easier access to the United States. Beyond that, obviously the diaspora, we will continue to expand and build out the chamber. We'll expand our spotlights as we have more regional events, all virtual at this point, but hopefully at some time moving back to a in-person, as we hope next September in LA. But also the continued global coordination. We have a lot of groups that we work with, many of which have organized today's event, including LEA, PayPal, Allah, AmCham, the Latvian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and our new friends, the Latvian Export Agency, the Red Jackets. So again, I think there's a lot that we can do to come together to support Latvia and its goals to continue building its exports. Thank you, and that's all I have.
Thank you, Mikos. And we really do need to circle back to this question of the diaspora, which is one of the central themes of this forum. And it's not just North America, US and Canada, it's Europe, South America, Asia Pacific. There are Latvians and friends of Latvians, old diaspora, new diaspora, dispersed throughout the world. How do we harness them? How do we harness their capital, their knowledge, their connections? All those listening around the world should know that they are needed here, and there's all kinds of ways to contribute, whether it be establishing a fund or establishing a chamber, whether it's investing here, whether it's simply making connections for Latvian business people in your country. There's many levels of involvement, but the key point is, how do we harness all this knowledge, all this capital around the world, educated people in all age groups to contribute to Latvia's development. We are running low on time, and we do have questions that we need to get to, but maybe I would quickly like to pose this question to our panelists, very short responses. How do you see the diaspora, involving the diaspora in your organizations, whether it's a tech company or a cosmetics company, whether it's a concrete company, whether it's an exporter or a service provider? We need to find ways it's not our responsibility here in Latvia, it's the diaspora's responsibility if they wish to contribute to development here. But how do we make these connections short of this forum that we have once a year? Maybe our panelists have an input on how they could see involving the diaspora listening right now around the world in their businesses or Latvian business in general. Anyone?
Yeah, if I may start, then I see like maybe 3 levels of involvement, and one which is already happening and that we appreciate a lot is the diaspora is acting as brand ambassador for Latvian goods, which is fantastic, and we really have to evaluate the networks that we have and spread Latvian products. Then we actually have used a diaspora to build our business distribution abroad. So we have partnered with Latvian diasporas as our employees to build to serve customers in specific countries where we act directly. Then we also have been in contact more on the consultation level, contacting networking level with quite many people from diaspora when we contemplate about specific market entry or strategy. So that these are the 3 ways what we practically employ when we think about diaspora at Madara.
Thank you. Any other inputs from the panel on this question?
Yeah,
please.
Everybody can. Yeah, so from our side, we see this probably very good approach, as Mikus told on this entry support to the new markets. If the diaspora establishes such a fund to support the company, is definitely something that we see how we can support our exporters. But on a major level, the definition of unified brand and the brand ambassadors, because the brand of Latvia is through the stories, through the success stories such as are represented here by the CEOs of multiple companies. These are the stories, and if the diaspora would work from one side as a catalyst, what is important for their country, what is the values in the country that they're living, on the one hand, and from the other hand, the information about the opportunities in Latvia, the great stories either in sports or entrepreneurs or whether culture, etc., etc., etc. So if they have a unified platform where they can have this information, whenever they have to tell somebody what is happening in Latvia, they know one link where to go and they can research everything that they need. And from the other side, if they want to be involved in defining those values, defining the brands, that we're open to that, and they can come and join. And on the third thing, that if we talk about success stories, one of the success stories is through the business incubation. I'd say we're ready to establish an online business incubator for diaspora to move their business ideas and to incubate them under the, let's say, law of Latvia, and later on become through this to become as small companies or big companies or investors. Because again, this is something they have great connections to their local countries where they live, and they can use those contacts as opportunities, as leads for new businesses. So therefore, this is brand ambassadors, the let's say export supporters through local, let's say, funds or companies, or then a business incubator as customers online, and later on maybe even establishing here the local representation. Thank you.
Thank you. A quick question for organizers. The clock in front of me says I have 6 minutes, and my watch says 11. I hope I have 11 minutes. Perfect. Giannis, you had a comment.
Sure, yeah. My comment was more simple. I thought that we are Latvians, it's a small group, but we know each other. And I think it is really great in this world to have a network of people where you know each other and you can help each other. And I think this is a great advantage and opportunity. I see, for instance, in Israel, you know, we are working very actively in Israel. And the Israeli guys, they always like, oh, you know, my cousin is building something in Hungary. Do you want to go there? And I think it's just a great kind of a mindset and opportunity and something that is very good to copy from the Israelis. And I think that, you know, Andris Berziņš mentioned that we are like Israel, except without military industrial complex. And I think, yeah, that's exactly is a good metaphor, and why not adopt it? And it could be also that we are helping each other like Israelis. It's a good way how to go. And this is why WLEIF is here, and American Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I could add something, Eva?
Please.
Yeah, so I mean, completely agree, and I think that's part of the responsibility then of if we have local chambers of commerce to really map out that diaspora, who exists, what type of skill sets, expertise, and experiences we have. You know, as we saw, we have about 120 independent corporate members, but we have 86,000 residents here. So we haven't even hit the tip of the iceberg. We need to be able to identify in each part of the world what kind of expertise we have and what we can lend to that. Just as a quick story about the founding of the chamber, you know, it was really about 5 or 6 years ago. We had a bunch of entrepreneurs, businessmen here in Chicago get together for a first of its kind business networking dinner. And there were individuals at the table that I've known for 45 years and individuals I'd met for 1 year. But what became apparent as we went around the table and introduced ourselves, we had no idea what we each did business-wise on a professional level. We'd never really discussed the business side, and that's where that high context versus low context society comes in. We have to be able to discuss what we do in the business sense, and we have to be able to support each other. And as Giannis mentioned, yeah, we have to have that kind of high context Israeli type culture where we're constantly assisting and making referrals and providing support and collaborating with individuals throughout the diaspora and throughout Latvia itself.
Thank you, Nikos. We are running quickly out of time. I'm going to circle back to a final question. I know there's questions in the feed from the audience. I started my presentation today describing these cycles of crises and responses and demonstrating that when Latvians and Latvia needs to get a job done in a big challenge or a crisis, we buckle down and we do it. And we've been talking for years about this sustained economic surge that we all want for our country in Latvian uzrāviens. And so maybe as a final word from each of you in 90 seconds, what is your key factor that you consider in your business that is going to contribute to a sustained uzrāviens economic surge for our economy going forward through the crisis, post-crisis? Please, Normans.
Thank you. There is no magic bullet. You have to keep digging all day, every day. And if you do things right, then the customers will come and orders will come. So it's just day-to-day hard work, I think. Okay. And just put your work and put your money where your mouth is.
Mm-hmm. Next.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, just because I run in technical details and my phone is just will die in 20 seconds. From our side, I say that what really was good is the dialogue between the government and companies and society. And if we can keep running the dialogue, and definitely regarding to the Norman's comment on put our money where our mouth is, then definitely good things will happen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Lotte.
So it's absolutely day-to-day work in three categories in Madara case. So this is brand building and correctly positioning the brand in the mind of the global consumer. This is working on our retail network, both digital and physical, and of course pursuing all our innovation-driven values and sustainability values inside all the value chain to deliver a product that is really has no compromises. So these are kind of the first, the three pillars on which we see sustained development.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I may, very, very final pitch. Please connect all of us on LinkedIn. So my takeaway from this panel is that I have already 2 new connections on LinkedIn during that conference. So don't be shy, don't be shy. We all are there.
There was a discussion last year at WLEIF in Valmiera about creating this national, this global contact exchange of Latvians. We need to check in with where that is at this point, whether it's LinkedIn or whether it's some new network, but that's something to be discussed. Andris, do you have any comment? Uzrāviens, how are we going to reach that, that magic Uzrāviens, the economic surge, and sustain it?
So I think it's going to come. I see lots of startups that are going to be part of that. And as the entrepreneurs in this panel said, it just takes more and more work. You need to just work at it every day. And they're doing exactly that. I think what everyone else who isn't an entrepreneur can do is actually not be hesitant about celebrating the successes that happen and not give into a traditional Latvian way of being jealous of someone else's success. Skaudība is the problem here, to use the right words. When one of our entrepreneurs has success, it's important that everyone else celebrate, and that's why I like the new approach regarding branding. And what I was pushing very much was take the stories that are out there right now. Don't invent something new. There are great stories out there. Let's multiply them. Have the government multiply that marketing that these companies are doing already, and the success will come.
Thank you, Andre. Mikos?
Yeah, I'd say very simply what we can do for the Latvian American Chamber of Commerce is first and foremost provide turnkey access to the U.S. market exclusively for Latvian-based companies. And then secondly, for the entire Latvian diaspora and community on a global basis is promote each other's economic vitality. Like I said, hire Latvian, buy Latvian, and collectively, if we can raise the entire Latvian cultural group economically, it'll help everything on a global basis.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. We're almost out of time. Again, a question of diaspora relates to demographics. None of you discussed structural issues that we need to do. One structural issue is resolving, if it can be resolved, demographics. We need people. We need possibly immigration, but we need our great diaspora of talented Latvians to consider to come here and do business, move here, contribute here. That's going to be a major factor as well. Are there any final comments from this discussion? Because we have about a minute, and I would like to thank you for your contributions. And obviously, we could talk for hours on these subjects, and we will. Any final words?
Ivar, just to respond to your final comment, I actually see diaspora moving back. So this summer, several people I know, entrepreneurs, key executives I've seen actually moving back, especially. So COVID is the great time to sell Latvia. You know, come to a country with hardly any virus, small cities, you can easily get out into the countryside. It's a fantastic sales story. So come on back. Now's the time.
Thank you very much for your contributions. Thank you all for listening, and let's work together. As Mikos said, let's give each other business. Let's stay in touch through our contacts, LinkedIn, and let's all contribute, because together we can make Latvia a more prosperous place for all of us, and for Latvians and friends of Latvia. Thank you.